6 o'clock in the morning, December 7th, 1942. Black sand at Buna on the north coast of Papua. The man behind the machine gun was German. He wore an American uniform. That strip of beach was about 100 yards wide. The Japanese came at him from both ends at once. He held. The place where he held would be called Botcher's Corner for the rest of the war. You know the hero part. You don't know what that corner actually did. Picture this coast. Go back to late 1942. The northeastern edge of Papua is not a beach the way you think of a beach. It is swamp, kunai grass taller than a man, and coconut plantation rows that stop your view after 10 yards. The water table is 3 feet down. You cannot dig. Try to dig a foxhole and it fills with water. So the Japanese did not dig. They built. Start with a shallow trench 6 to 40 feet long. Frame it with posts. Stack coconut logs 1.5 feet thick for walls. Lay 2 or 3 courses of logs for a roof. Cover it with earth, with 44-gallon drums filled with sand, with steel rails. You get a bunker 7 or 8 feet high, flat, invisible under branches and dirt. Then connect it to the next bunker with a fire trench. Then do that 100 times. From Buna Village to Cape Ndiadere, the line was about 3.5 miles long and 3/4 of a mile deep. Buna Village itself was a cluster of native huts. Half a mile to the southeast stood Buna Mission, the government station, 3 European houses and a few dozen huts. Between them, swamp, creek, plantation and those boxes made of logs. At this end of the line, the defense was run by Captain Yoshitatsu Yasuda of the Special Naval Landing Forces, under Colonel Yokoyama, who held the eastern end. Yasuda's men had had since September to make every box cover the necks. To understand why Americans were stuck there, take the 2 months before. The Japanese had come over the Owen Stanley Range to take Port Moresby. The Australians stopped them on the Kokoda track and pushed them back. The Japanese fell back to the north coast and dug in at Gona, Buna, and Sanananda. That was September. By November, the Allies thought the enemy was finished. Intelligence said maybe 1,000 defenders at Buna. Sick, hungry, ready to run. It was wrong. There were more than 7,000 by mid-November, and they were not the tired remnants of Kokoda. They were fresh naval troops, the Special Naval Landing Forces, with tanks, with heavy machine guns, with those bunkers. On the American side, the bulk of the attack fell to a National Guard division from Wisconsin and Michigan, the 32nd Infantry Division, the Red Arrow. They had trained for Europe. They had no jungle training. They had not come up the Kokoda track. They had come over the Kappa Kappa Trail, the eastern goat path the Americans misnamed after the village of Gabba Gabba. The total distance was over 130 miles, most of it not a trail at all. The leading battalion spent 42 days on that jungle hogback, crossing high passes with half rations, arriving at Saputo on November 20th with boots rotted off their feet. They called themselves the Ghost Battalion because they looked like ghosts. They carried little artillery. On one front they had 8 Australian 25-pounders and 2 mountain howitzers. On the other they had 4. Their mortars could not crack coconut logs. Add it up and you get men asked to run at boxes with rifles. On November 19th, the Americans went in. Warren Force on the right, under Brigadier General Hanford McNider, driving up the coast toward the airstrips. Urbana Force on the left, around Buna Village and the Mission, named by Division Commander Edwin Harding for Reichelberger's birthplace, Urbana, Illinois. The plan looked neat on a map. On the ground it died. Men waded through swamp to the waist. Kunai cut their hands. They could not see a bunker until it fired from 3 sides at once. The bunkers were linked. Suppress 1 and 2 more fired from behind it. Artillery was too light to smash logs 1.5 feet thick. Airstrikes could not find targets under canopy. For 2 weeks the line did not move. By the end of November, the division listed 82 killed, 325 wounded, 85 missing in that slice alone. Dysentery and malaria ran through every company. Of 9,825 men who entered combat, the division would take 2,520 battle casualties. 586 killed. Another 7,125 non-battle casualties followed, most fever. Picture that as a visual. For every man hit by a bullet, almost 3 were carried out shivering. Now picture a platoon that has slept wet for 10 days trying to take one of those boxes. Back at Port Moresby, the commander was furious. Douglas MacArthur had told Washington Buna would fall quickly. The press had printed it. North Africa was getting the headlines, and he wanted a victory. He called in the Corps commander. Go back to November 30th. MacArthur looked at the man who had been his classmate at West Point in 1909 and said it plain. "Bob, I am putting you in command at Buna. Relieve Harding. Remove all officers who will not fight. If necessary, put sergeants in charge of battalions. And then the line everyone remembers. Bob, I want you to take Buna, or not come back alive." The man who heard it was 56-year-old Lieutenant General Robert Eichelberger. He flew to Dobrodura on December 1st and walked to the front on December 2nd. He found troops exhausted, starved, feverish, in tatters. He called it a Leavenworth nightmare, meaning no school solution fit. He relieved Major General Edwin Harding that same day. He sacked the regimental commanders and most battalion commanders too. He replaced Harding with the division artillery commander, Brigadier General Albert Waldron. Some officers called him ruthless, Prussian. He stopped the attacks for 2 days. He reorganized. He tried to get food forward and get the sick out. Then he told the two forces to attack again on December 5th. Take this one date and hold it, December 5th. Now meet the second man. He was not a general. On paper, he was a staff sergeant. In reality, he was a platoon commander in Company H of the 126th Infantry, attached to Company G, because there were not enough officers left to fill the slots. He had been born Hermann Johann Friedrich Botcher on July 13, 1909, in Landsberg, Germany. His mother died when he was a toddler. His father was killed in World War I. He went to Australia with an uncle. He came to the United States in 1931. He studied at San Francisco State College. He was a carpenter. He was also a convinced anti-fascist. When the Spanish Civil War broke out, he went to Spain and fought for the International Brigade, the Abraham Lincoln Battalion. He became a captain there. He came back in March 1939 on the President Harding. The United States denied his citizenship application because of Spain. Then Pearl Harbor happened. On January 5, 1942, 1 month to the day after the attack, he walked into the Presidio and enlisted as a German national in the United States Army. He was 32. He was not a citizen when they shipped him to New Guinea. He was a machine gunner who had already commanded men in combat against fascists before most of his platoon had fired a shot. This is where the satisfying wrong answer starts. Everyone wants this to be about green troops needing guts. The story gets told as if courage was the shortage. Brave men finally charged and brave men won. On December 5th, a Bana force attacked Buna Village from the south with 4 companies, after a B-25 strike and a mortar barrage at 10:30 in the morning. Generals Eichelberger and Waldron went forward to watch. It was the same wall of bunkers. The companies were pinned. Then Botcher did what the orders said not to do. He took 31 men forward, wading across a creek under constant mortar fire. 12 volunteers stayed with him to the end. He stood up. He threw hand grenades into the pillboxes. He did not go around them. He went through them. He cracked a gap and kept walking until he hit the ocean. Picture that. The Japanese line was a pocket that stretched 4 miles from Buna Village to Duropa Plantation. Botcher cut it. He put 12 men on the black sand between Buna Village and Buna Mission and told them to dig. No shovels, no sandbags. Just hands and helmets in sand that filled with water. They dug in on the edge of the beach in a shallow arc. The place became known as Botcher's Corner. It was about as big as a tennis court. He had 1 heavy machine gun and a few rifles. He had separated 2 Japanese garrisons that had been talking to each other for weeks. December 7th was day 3 on that sand. 1 year after Pearl Harbor, 6 in the morning, the Japanese in Buna Mission tried to take the corner back. The Japanese in Buna Village tried from the other side. Botcher had the gun on a low shelf. He fired right first and broke the attack from the mission. He swung left and broke the attack from the village. A bullet went through his hand. Shrapnel cut the same hand. A mortar broke 1 eardrum. A medic dressed it where he lay. Headquarters noted the wound as an afterthought, still commanding his gun. Over the next 7 days they came again. By a conservative count, his 12 men killed more than 120 Japanese there, as war correspondent George Johnston later wrote in Time on September 20th, 1943. If you wanted proof that will could beat bunkers, there it was. A German-born sergeant who had fought fascists in Spain held 100 yards of beach with a busted hand. Eichelberger walked up and promoted him from staff sergeant to captain on the spot. First Distinguished Service Cross. Done. But that story leaves out what the beach actually did. You are thinking what any sensible person thinks here. So what? 1 machine gun on a beach does not take a 3-mile bunker line. You are right to be rude about it. Say it plainer. That is a nice medal story, and it has nothing to do with how you crack a fort. Good, keep that. Because the thing that actually turned Buna was not heroism on that sand. It was what that sand did to the line behind it. Go back to how the bunkers worked. Each bunker covered the next. Trenches ran between them. A platoon could fire on you from one bunker while you were trying to take another 10 yards away. To take them, you had to get among them and kill them from behind. Frontal attacks just fed men into 3 directions of fire. What Botcher did was cut the telephone wire, and the foot trail, and the carrying party that ran along the beach between the 2 biggest clusters. Buna Village and Buna Mission stopped being one position. They became 2. The village garrison now had to bring food and bullets across open sand under a machine gun instead of through covered trenches. The mission garrison could not shift reserves west along the plantation edge. Now put the 2 sides by side. Before December 5th, an attack on the village was an attack on the whole pocket. After December 5th, an attack on the village alone. Take this one case. On December 9th, just 4 days after the wedge went in, Buna fell to the Australians to the west. That mattered. But on the American front, Warren Force was still stuck east of the old strip. Urbana Force was still grinding south of the village. Without a gap, every gain was given back the next night by infiltration. After the wedge, the village group could not be reinforced from the mission. Their mortars ran low. Their wounded could not be pulled back along the coast. Eichelberger's men could now do what the manuals said to do. Approach a bunker from the blind side. Throw grenades through the firing slit. Do it 1 bunker at a time without the next bunker saving it. On December 14th, 9 days after Botcher had waded that creek, Buna Village fell. That is not a coincidence of timing. Cut the pocket on the 5th, take 1/2 of it on the 14th. Then the rest of the pocket took 3 more weeks and needed tanks and a second cut. On December 15th and 16th, the Coconut Grove west of Entrance Creek fell. From December 17th to 20th, frontal attacks on the triangle failed again, even with infantry alone. E Company lost 35 men in 1 day. So they stopped hitting the triangle, crossed Entrance Creek north of it on December 21st, and drove a second wedge to the sea between the Mission and Juripa Point by December 29th. The first 2 M3 Stuarts did not get to Dobadura until December 18th. 2 more came by sea on December 23rd. Those tanks finally did what infantry could not. Drive up to a coconut log wall and fire point blank into the slit. But tanks could only work once the line was split. Before the split, tanks would have been shot from 2 sides. After the split, they worked 1 cluster at a time. The wedge did not storm the bunkers. It made storming possible. The position would have to be held for 8. That means no hot food. The platoon had been dug in for 2 days without relief before the wedge. After, they faced 2 directions with a few rifles and 1 gun. The tide came in. At night, men crawled to 10 yards before you saw them. Botcher had 1 eardrum broken and his hand cut. He stayed. Records say he and his troops fought off attacks for 7 days, during which he was wounded twice before relief. He was not hit once. He was hit, stayed, and was hit again. 1 company that tried to take the Inland Triangle lost 40% of its men in an afternoon. Botcher stayed to help and was wounded in the arm by a machine gun and taken to the hospital at Dobadura. Add it up. The 2nd Battalion of the 126th went in with about 1,200 men. When the battle ended on January 22nd, 165 were left standing. To see what holding that split cost after Botcher left, look at Christmas Eve. On December 24th, near that same creek line, Sergeant Kenneth Gruenert of Company L, 127th Infantry, second in command of a platoon ordered to drive 600 yards to the beach, went alone against 2 pillboxes with grenades and rifle fire. Killed 3 in the first, knocked out the second, and was cut down by sniper fire. On the same day, 1st Sergeant Elmer Burr threw himself on an enemy grenade that landed by his company commander. Both men died there. Both were given the Medal of Honor 10 months later, on October 11th, 1943. You do not hold a beach for 8 days, because someone ordered you to be brave. You hold it because if you leave, the pocket closes. At this point, the person who has been pushing back on the hero story is right about something bigger. And it matters to say it out loud. He is right that Buna should never have been a test of who could hold a beach with a busted hand. The division should not have been there that way. It had no jungle training. It had the wrong shoes. The shoes rotted. It had the wrong rations. It had no quinine discipline at first, and fever did more damage than bullets. Remember that number. 7,125 non-battle casualties, 2,952 of them needing hospital, most of that malaria and dysentery. Visualize that. 2 hospitals for every rifle company, filled with men shaking under ponchos in heat. The intelligence was a guess. The artillery was 2 days away when it was needed on day 1. The bunkers were not on any map because no one had looked properly. When you send that force at those boxes, you are going to get what happened in late November. Men going forward because they were told to and getting cut to pieces. Botcher's wedge did not fix that system. It exploited a seam the system finally found, because a sergeant who had done this before in Spain recognized that you do not take a fort by knocking on its front door. Change gear for a minute. Forget the arrows on the map. Picture 10 o'clock at night on that sand. It is dark enough that you see muzzle flash before you see the bunker. The sea is to your north. Behind you is the strip where the grass has been flattened by men crawling. In front of you, 5 yards away, the water table has turned your shallow pit into soup. Your hands are white and soft. A coconut log wall is in front of you, but you cannot see if anyone is behind it. You hear water moving in the creek to your left. You hear someone not speaking English whisper to your right. The gun is low, its tripod sunk. You have fired it in short bursts because the barrel heats. You count. 1, 2, 3 seconds. Stop. Listen. The man next to you is the one who went to Spain. He is 33. He is not a citizen. He is telling you to stay low. He does not raise his voice. He points with his good hand. That is the night the medal citations compress into one line about extraordinary heroism on December 5th to 11th. They leave out the mosquitoes. They leave out the way fever made a man shiver even when the air was hot. They leave out the fact that the men who held that corner did not know it was a corner. They thought it was just the place where the orders said to stop and not leave. They stayed because the man with the broken eardrum stayed. That is all. After Buna Village fell, the division kept dragging itself east. Urbana Force turned on the strip. Warren Force, now with the Australian 18th Brigade under Brigadier George Wotton and those Stuarts, ground towards Europa Point. Botcher was there on December 20th. He went forward again, and again he did what he had done on the 5th, throwing grenades, breaking a bunker from the side. 9 days after the first citation, he earned the Oak Leaf Cluster to his Distinguished Service Cross, a second DSC for a second time. It is rare. He was commissioned captain on the field. He became a citizen on that same coast in December 1943, a year after the Sand. He kept fighting. In June 1944, they gave him the reconnaissance troop of the 32nd Division, mechanized, the eyes and ears of the division commander, Major General William Gill. That job meant living behind the line of the enemy, more often than behind your own. On Leyte, in the Philippines, in the autumn of 1944, he spent more than 40 days behind Japanese lines along the Ormoc Corridor, hitting supply dumps, setting ambushes, calling in positions. He had no wife. He had no parents. He had an aunt in San Francisco and a lot of friends in the army, as his men would say later, sitting in the drizzle and staring at the ground. In the last days of 1944, he was on a hill overlooking Sillard Bay. On December 30th, a group of Japanese soldiers found his position and hit it with small arms and mortar rounds. One round fell directly on his hull. He died there on December 31st, 1944, age 35. The message his men sent back the next day was 4 words on the radio. Botcher dead. Recon troop withdrawing west. That was it. Captain Dick Tucker, an officer who knew him, sent a line to the news wires that read like an obituary for a kind of soldier that did not exist anymore. Major Herman Botcher, veteran soldier in the fight against fascism, hero of the Battle of Buna, and reconnaissance troop commander, whose exploits had become legend among the men who were fighting the Pacific War, lay dead on a hill overlooking Sillard Bay. He is buried now in the Manila American Cemetery, Plot L Row 4, Grave 134, under a white cross far from Landsberg, far from San Francisco State, far from that black sand. He had been an American for exactly 1 year and a day. Eichelberger had once told the press that Botcher was the one-man army of Buna. The army kept the line. The beach is still there. Here is new material, not a summary. You can still visit the place. In 1992, the national commander of the American Legion stood with a New Guinean spokesman at Buna and dedicated a small memorial at Botcher's Corner. It is not large. A plaque, a flag sometimes. The government station houses are gone. The bunkers have sunk. You can walk the beach at low tide and find rust and a piece of coconut log that does not rot because it is soaked in oil and seawater. Put your hand on it. It is 1.5 feet through, hard as stone. That is what rifles were asked to smash. 2 other sergeants from the same division, Elmer Burr and Kenneth Gruenert, both killed near Buna on that Christmas Eve, were given the Medal of Honor later. Botcher got 2 Distinguished Service Crosses. The reason the corner matters is not the broken hand. It is what the corner taught. Find the seam. Cut the line that feeds the box. Hold the cut until the boxes starve one by one. That is how you take a line that cannot be taken head on. It works in Papua. It works wherever a fort depends on its neighbors. Take this last detail with you, and leave the hero music off. Botcher died on December 31st, 1944, exactly 1 year to the day after he became a citizen. He had enlisted as a German who was not allowed to become an American because he had fought fascists. Then he became an American between battles. Then he died behind enemy lines doing the same kind of work he had done on that beach, living in the gap. The army never figured out what to do with that story. There is a reason the corner has a plaque and not a name on the map most people use. There is a reason his 2nd Distinguished Service Cross is a footnote and his 1st is a paragraph, and his time in Spain is a line most accounts skip. We lack a simple shape. German-born man proves he is American by holding a gun. It is true, and it is not enough. The unresolved question is not whether he was brave. The record says he was. The question is, how many other seams were there that no one cut, because no one who had learned to cut them in Spain was there to see them, and how many of those 100-yard gaps are still sitting, with water in them, waiting for someone to hold them for 8 days?